Good evening. Welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Waterville City Council. If anybody would like an agenda, it's in the plastic sleeve out back by the map. Before we get started, I'll ask Chairman Sewell to please stand and lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started on our regular agenda, I would like to ask for just a brief moment of silence for Lori Bushy. She was a Waterville native. She taught in our schools for 44 years, and anybody that's been online for the last few days understands what an impact and how many generations and lives she touched. And she's somebody the community will miss. So if we could please just have a moment of silence. Thank you. The first part of our meeting is community notes. Community notes is a time where if anybody has something they would like to say or speak about that is not currently scheduled on tonight's agenda, now would be the time to do it. We just ask that you please come to the podium and tell us your name, where you live, and what you want to talk about.
My name's Marion Flaherty. I live in Ward 6. And I would just like to share with you one of the best kept secrets in the city of Waterville, which is that the Waterville Public Library possesses a low vision piece of equipment for people who see very poorly to be able to read with. It's in the room that has the fireplace in it, whichever room that is. And it looks kind of like a computer screen. You stick a book underneath, it magnifies the print. And as a person with low vision myself, I'm able to read a phone book with that. It's a very effective tool. And I just wanted to speak about it because it's very underutilized, because I think that most people really don't even know it's there. The other thing that I would just like to speak about quickly along the same lines is I would really like to thank whoever it is who put the voice activation onto the walk signs to help people cross the street who can't see all the way to the other side to see whether it says walk or don't walk. And it was a very big surprise to me one day to have a telephone talk to me and tell me to wait and then instruct me when I could safely cross. And it's just a wonderful thing. So if you ever think that we can't afford this, we got to get rid of it, remember me. Marion Flaherty needs to get to the grocery store.
That's great.
So thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Scott McAdoo. I'm a Waterville resident, but I'm here representing the Board of Directors of the Waterville Community Land Trust. I know I usually like to give every so many months kind of an update, but we really have had any good big things, but we have some nice three big things. First of all, to update everybody, we are still working on a plan for the properties we purchased from at 226 to 232 Water Street. The plan for the 226, 228 parcel is we are working to try to develop and put a small little house on there. We don't know it's be like a small little one bedroom, but we're still working on plans. We're in the preliminary stages of that. Also, the 232 parcel will remain a park. We're working on that as well. And I'd like to thank the city for their patience as we try to hash out this plan, so please stay tuned. We had our Waterfest, which actually was a big success. We had many families stop by. Everybody who attended said it was great. Two members of the board from the Kennebec-Metzkowski Trails led a tour down Lower Water Street to some future sites where we're planning on a few trails. Everybody loved it, and we got some good input on that. And finally, I saved the best news for last. The Waterville Community Land Trust is proud to announce we have sold 181 Water Street, our first project. The new owner received the keys on July 27th. So a big milestone for us. It's been a lot of work, a lot of ups and downs, but we have finally sold our first project, so now we're going to be working hopefully soon on our second one. Thank you.
Julian Payne, Ward 5. Just to let the community know, there will be a service for Laurie next week. I have it on my calendar at home, but I don't know the exact date, but there will be a service. So, and I would like to formally thank the mayor for the nomination to the planning board. It was nice that you had the faith in me for that position. But after talking to Patty, I guess I can't serve on 2 paid boards at once. The ink did look a bit fresh on that charter, but
couldn't skirt the conflicts.
yeah. So it was definitely conflict that applied to me, but I do appreciate the nomination, and it would have been a pleasure to serve. But thank you.
You bet.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to present the Friends of Quarry Road annual report tonight with our former president, Joe Reiser, and our current president, Dave McClay. We've got a few handouts here. We'll be brief. We've got 2. You did already, both of them? Yeah. Okay, great. One of them you'll see, yeah, it's 2-sided. It presents both summer and winter, logistics and statistics. Pretty impressive. Areas growing by leaps and bounds. And Joe's got a summary for you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So the venue has been just a huge success, and it's really thanks to the partnership, all the support the city of Waterville provides, is invested in that place, and to some extent in the work that our organization has done as well. I'd just like to update you on a few of the investments that we made possible this year in the venue. So we did some investment in improving the road, although actually a lot of the improvements were then the city, right, groomed the road again after that. We jointly with the Central Maine Mountain Bike Association got a grant to build some new single-track mountain bike trails. Those are getting a lot of use, and every week now there's a youth group that comes out on Tuesday nights to use the mountain bike trails. A couple of the competition ski trails were judged to be too dangerous by a lot of the people who've come to the big events that we host, and so we were able to pay for some redesign and trail improvement work, and those were widely hailed as greatly improved when there was a couple of competitions on them this winter. Since bringing big events with lots of competitors to Waterville is a driver of economic activity in the city, I thought that was a particularly important investment. And the biggest thing that we're providing the city this year is a recently renovated, pretty late model new snow grooming machine, which is going to give us best-in-class grooming consistently there at the venue. Right. In addition to that, the Friends organized a planning exercise for the future, and so we have some designs that envision a possible future that we might like to see developed out there. Obviously, the city would have to buy that vision. We'd have to raise tons of money to make it happen, but those are things we'd like to talk about in the future, we'd like to keep working on. But in the meanwhile, just to highlight what a great venue the Quarry Road Trails are. It's a city park. In the warm weather, it's free to everyone. In the winter, Waterville residents get a discounted rate on passes for the use of the groomed ski trails. Walking on the snowshoe trails is always free. So I want to just briefly introduce my successor as president, Dave McClay. We'll say a little bit more about what they're doing this year, but thanks again to the city of Waterville for all the support.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you all. I know you've got a heavy agenda, so I won't take up too much time. Please take some time, councilors, to look at the master plan, recognize that that is, at this point, a conceptual look at what the venue might look like in the future. At Friends of Quarry Road, we know that there's a lot more work to be done, so we have a big planning agenda ahead of us in terms of building a business plan for that facility for additional programming that will bring money into the city, not cost the city taxpayer money, as well as strategic planning for our own organization to raise the money and find the expertise necessary to bring that vision to reality. So we will be back here certainly to discuss that in more detail as these things come to fruition. One thing for the council to be aware of, we do have one seat on our board of directors that's designated ex officio for a member of city council. So if the council would like to recommend one of your members to us, we would love to have you join and get more familiar with the details. And again, thank you for the partnership, and to Matt and to Mike for being great partners in this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very much. Anybody else for community notes?
Good evening. I'm Mark Andre from, I'm running as a candidate for State House District 110, the north end of Waterville in Oakland. Before I get started, I'll just hand some of these around if I could. If you pass those out for me, Steve. What I've just handed the councilors is a petition drive that we're launching tomorrow. The petition drive asks Colby College to put in the necessary funds to lower the Waterville's mill rate to $18.95 for a period of 5 years and guarantee that rate over that period. The estimated cost of that would be between 15 and 20 million. It also asks them to communicate with Thomas College and ask Thomas College to contribute as well. The intention of this is to get Waterville's mill rate down to a competitive level that will allow us to compete with the surrounding communities and attract business and residents to our area. Colby College has done a wonderful job improving our downtown. There's no doubt about that. And the money they've invested here is going to make a big difference for our community over the long run. But until we get our mill rates down in the town, people are going to continue to reside in the surrounding communities where the lower mill rates exist. The purpose of this is therefore to bring investment into the community, provide additional revenues needed to lower the tax rates, and hopefully provide a sustainable lower tax rate going forward after the 5 years that would be below or at that 19 level. The petition drive, I want to make clear, is a nonpartisan petition drive. It's being sponsored by my campaign. I'm a state financed or publicly financed candidate, in theory at least. For anybody that's been following the news. So I'm still waiting on those funds, but in theory, this is a publicly financed campaign, and I wanted to put the funds to good public use, which is running this petition. You'll find the online petition states clearly that supporting the petition is not a support for me or my candidacy for office. So please sign the petition even if you're not voting for me or don't intend to. The petition site that is online is for residents, business owners, employees, and folks with an interest in the city. You do not have to be a registered voter to sign it. This is not something that's going to go up before Patty. What this is a show of faith in this plan to get taxes down in this town for 5 years and let the economy take off. So what we're asking you to do is go online, and the petition site is AskColbyAndrePetition.com. We have our first mailer going out on this to about 3,200 mailboxes in Waterville tomorrow. We hope you'll all go to the site and sign that petition. If the councilors have any questions about this over time, I'd urge you to contact me, look me up. And what you have my pledge on is when I get up to the level of about 800 to 1,000 signatures on this petition, I'm going to come back to this mic and I'm going to hand you those signatures. And I'm going to ask you to formalize this request to Colby College in a letter and vote on that and put it before the college as a formal request from the town. But thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it.
Counselor, you had a community note?
Yeah, I wanted to bring some highlights to some things that I have been.
Hang on, we got a final
One
note.
other thing, I didn't notice Kevin Violet showed up, but Kevin, for anyone that doesn't know him, he's in the process of opening up phase 2 of Streamview Estates off County Road. And I had an interesting conversation with Kevin at the coffee shop the other morning. And Kevin just wanted to speak briefly on the impact Waterville's current mill rate is having on his efforts to sell that new subdivision.
Thank you. I'll be real brief because I see you have quite a few people here. Kevin Violet, been developing. My grandfathers and uncles built Matthews Avenue, Violet Avenue, Cool Street, did a lot of development in the city. I own a few hundred acres in the city. I pay quite a few $1,000s of tax bills. I do not have a vote in the municipal Waterville process. I'm an outsider. I live in Fairfield. I pay taxes and try to develop. The first question I always get, and I got it this morning on the phone, you have a project in Waterville, what's the mill rate? That's the first question. If you want a long-term solution to a long-term problem to go away, that mill rate has to be addressed. I started Streamview Drive 25 years ago. Real estate is a patient man's game, especially when the mill rate is in the 20s. All the surrounding towns property I have, 13, 14, 15 mill rates, I sell property. Waterville has that issue. On Upper Main Street, I currently have a permit for 26 retirement homes. I ran the sewer lines 15 years ago. I ran the water line 10 years ago. The storm drains were completed. It's a mowed City View Estates road off Upper Main Street. I would love to develop retirement community housing in Waterville. I would love to put homes out, which I am in Fairfield right now, at 120,000 and up. I would like to continue developing in Waterville. The first question out of everybody's mouth about the Waterville projects, what's the mill rate? They know the answer to the question, but they're asking me just to remind me that I know. So thank you very much for your time and good luck.
Thank you. Councilman?
Something I wanted to bring up that has been an ongoing issue in Veterans Park across from the Waterville Public Library has been some reported to me versus some residents that live in and around the park has been a very active homeless population. And various things as far as this homeless population has actually been camping out, doing laundry, hanging their laundry on the fencing around the statue, defecating, drugs, various activities, profanity-laced conversations that, of course, would disturb even the brightest of all of us, but especially the senior citizens living in the towers right next to the property have been very avidly disturbed about some of these things that have been going on. And I'm in context with including Winifred Tate in communication about what's going on there, and the information that I have, and now through our city manager Mike Roy, Matt Skehan of Parks and Recreation, and of course the police department is involved in helping clear out some of that unfortunate activity that's been going on in a sacred park of all parks, of course, where we want to honor our veterans. It's totally unacceptable to have these kinds of things and activities and going on within the atmosphere of what we're supposed to be, calling a sacred place. So I definitely am advocating for putting hour restrictions on this park. Right now, the hours of that park is open from 6 a.m. to midnight, according to the statutes with our Department of Rec. I would like to see this put on the agenda as far as restricting that somewhat to give the ordinance some more bite with the police department. I would also, encourage more patrols and more advocacy for obviously the people that are there, finding a place for them, getting whatever resources involved that we need to help them at the same time, rather than just ejecting them without a end result. And but we do need to retake the park. We do need to protect the residents that border that property, and we need to hold that park sacred. So I wanted to bring everybody to an update that something is being done, and I just wanted to give that information out to the community tonight.
Mike, would you mind speaking to this? Because I know you've worked with Chief Massey on this, and I know oftentimes these issues are very complicated, and typically there's a lot of not only finance issues, but often substance abuse issues, mental health issues. A lot of these people could be veterans themselves. So can you just give us an update on what's happening with that?
Well, being a public park, the public has a right to be there. They don't have a right to do certain things. And that's what the police are going to focus on. Some of the things that have been going on, as Councilor Mayhew mentioned, are outside the bounds of acceptability. So I know the police were there late last week, over the weekend, and last night they asked quite a few people to leave. So I think the police are very, very much aware and are watching what goes on there. But again, public place, some people have a right to be there. There are even mothers with children in strollers too that apparently didn't have a place to go. So we're sensitive to that. So as you said, Mayor Isgrove, it's sometimes a little bit more complicated, but I think with our police officers, they're understanding, sympathetic enough to know how to handle it.
Just for my own recollection, because I know that park is listed on state websites, but is that strictly a city park, or is that?
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about that park once being a graveyard, a very, very early graveyard in the city of Waterville. And hopefully all the remains that were there are moved to Pine Grove. But there's still some people that believe that some remains are there, although no one really knows where. So that's where the park has gained a certain reverence in terms of it being a formal burial ground.
Okay, thank you. So anybody else for community notes? Portion of the meeting? All right, we'll move on to the approval of the, actually I guess we have a disclosure of the conflict of interest. Is there any counselor that feels they have a conflict of interest with a vote they might take tonight? No. We'll move on to the approval of the consent agenda. Could I get a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Unfinished business, order 122, 2018.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
An order providing for appropriation of funds.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there a discussion? Just so the public understands what it is. If you don't have an agenda, this is for a new airport pickup plow truck with equipment, because our old one was shot. Any discussion, questions? All right, Patty, can I get a roll call, please?
Councilor Sol.
Yes.
Councilor White.
Yes.
Councilor Mayhew.
Yes.
Councilor O'Donnell.
Yes.
Councilor DuPont.
Yes.
Vote is 5 in favor and 0 opposed.
Moving on to new business, resolution 126, 2018.
A resolution providing for authorizing a special municipal election to be held on November 6, 2018, plastic bag ordinance. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as municipal officers that the proposed plastic bag ordinance be put before the voters at the November 6, 2018 election.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there somebody here to discuss this?
Steve.
Oh, Steve, okay.
I'm just giving you a summary of what this would entail. The ordinance bans plastic shopping bags only at retail and commercial stores larger than 10,000 square feet in Waterville. If a Waterville business is under 10,000 square feet, this ordinance does not apply to them and they can continue to hand out plastic shopping bags. Restaurants and nonprofits are excluded entirely. Stores are welcome to hand out paper bags or reusable bags either for free or for a fee. Customers can bring any bag they want with them to the store, reusable, paper, and plastic. This ordinance does not apply to the thin film plastic bags without handles used to store fruit, vegetables, meat, seafood, or bulk items to prevent cross-contamination. If approved, the ordinance would take effect on Monday, April 22, 2019, which happens to be Earth Day. And then, you know, for me personally, this is a decision that should not be made by 7 councilors, as we cannot assure that the 7,000 plus voters that we represent the majority. So that's why I think this should go on the November 6th ballot for the entire city to vote on. Thank you.
Fundamentally, you won't be surprised that I don't believe it's the role of municipal government to be involved in these things and selectively regulating businesses this way. I do have some concerns. Would you both here to speak on behalf of Sustain Mid-Maine? Now, the membership is this being promoted by essentially by Sustainment Maine as a group, or is it just Waterville residents that are promoting this? Okay.
Yes, it is being promoted by Sustainment Maine Coalition's Rethink, Reduce, Reuse, Recycle team. Many of us are Waterville residents.
Right. Now, is this are ordinances similar to this and bans being looked at in surrounding communities, or just Waterville?
Augusta is looking at it, so too is Skowhegan.
Okay.
Many towns already have, many municipalities already have passed it.
And if this were to go to a referendum, would you be willing to guarantee that there wouldn't be the use of outside group funding and advocacy here in the city of Waterville to promote this upon the people of Waterville?
Define outside funding. If I get a grant from an organization to do publicity, is that outside funding?
In other words, are you going to have groups like the Maine People's Alliance here or Natural Resources Council Maine promoting this within the city?
Well, I work for them, so I guess I'm here right now.
Okay.
I mean, legally, we can spend up to $5,000 on the campaign without registering as a PAC, so it's our
I know, I just did
right.
that.
Yep.
And last question, what is the future plan? And I asked this because I have an email here, Linda, it's actually one of your emails, and I think it was to Steve, or perhaps to a group that says, let's ban styrofoam and straws. One of the concerns that we've heard in the past, and we've heard it from other people who have come and spoken about this, is that this is the start of a slippery slope this is the beginning that's going to start building and building. Next thing you know, Waterville's the town that can't have plastic straws, and next thing you know, Waterville. Is that on the agenda?
One step at a time.
So you wouldn't rule it out for sure? No.
I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, I mean, I can say there's 8 towns that have banned styrofoam. We're focused on getting this plastic bag ordinance passed by a vote of the people. We're not working on the foam ordinance at all right now, but there are companies like Dunkin' Donuts that have pledged to go foam-free by 2020. If all businesses would follow Dunkin' Donuts' lead, we wouldn't have to do this. But again, we're not planning to do a foam ordinance, but there are 8 towns in Maine that have already done it, and hundreds around the country. So there are models out there just like plastic bag ordinances.
Those are my questions. Anybody else on the council have questions?
This is a tough decision, in my opinion, basically because I represent a business, hospitality business, and I have friends in the chains of Hannaford, Shaw's, Walmart, that look at me as a business advocate. I'd be the first one to say that governmental regulation and layers of bureaucracy that the government has a kind of overreach into the business atmosphere, the business world is concerning to me. There is a lot of studies, there's a lot of formulas, there's a lot of different dialogue and discussion about what would be the best for Waterville with this particular ordinance and sending it to the voters. But I have to say that, you know, there is a lot of contemplation upon some of these businesses as to what's going to come around next, what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen a month from now, that we can not do or what we can do. So those are some of the decisions that I and some of the talk that I've been hearing as a business advocate for Waterville and promoting a business-friendly atmosphere in Waterville that I have concerns with. I understand the context of the ordinance, I understand the manner of the ordinance. It's just that I have a lot of concerns with that.
Yeah, well, thank you for your concerns. And just to say briefly that I've reached out to all of you over email and before this meeting, and was happy to have any conversations or answer any questions about what this ordinance would and wouldn't do. So, Councilor Mayhew, I'm happy to meet with you after this meeting and talk to you about this ordinance and what other towns are experiencing.
Yeah.
Right, but the vote's going to be public, so they really should be discussed. That's probably why he's discussing it here tonight.
Sure, yeah, and I'm happy to answer any questions right now. Again, we're asking this to be on the November ballot to give everybody in Waterville a chance to vote. Several towns in Maine have put this on the ballot rather than their councils or select boards voting on it outright. And they've passed in every town that they've been on the ballot by a relatively wide margin. So we're confident in that it will pass in Waterville as well.
What towns were those?
The towns of York voted, the towns of Topsom voted to put this in, Rockland voted to put this in, Manchester is the latest town that just did it back in June on the primary day. So there's several towns.
Bridgeton's too?
Bridgeton has not done it.
Thank you.
Did Sydney raised an anti-business attitude that this might create if we passed it? Well, what about the pro-person attitude that we could achieve by passing it?
Sure.
Speak to that, please.
Yeah, well, let me just say briefly that there are several companies that we have in Waterville that also have locations in other towns that currently have a bag ban or a bag fee, such as Hannaford. I mean, Hannaford is kind of the biggest, the obvious. And I've spoken to executives at Hannaford, and they take a neither for nor against position when it comes to these local issues, and they have adapted in many other towns. Olympia Sports as well, although I believe that the Olympia Sports here in Waterville will not be under this ordinance. They're lower than 10,000 square feet. Same with Bull Moose. So there's other companies in Waterville that are already adapting in other towns.
We'll keep it to questions of the council, and then we'll get to those in the public.
Again, I just want to make that point that so many times we've heard lately that we're not listening to the people, Sydney, so I just wanted to point out that this is our chance, to let the people speak.
Yeah, this was written, I wrote it. I live here in Waterville, I live in Ward 6. And I have a lot of experience with other towns in Maine that have banned or put a fee on plastic bags. So I'm very familiar with what works, what hasn't worked. I've spoken to town managers of towns that have been experiencing bag fees or bag bans the last 2 or 3 years. And I can send you all their word-for-word responses to my inquiries. The short answer is that it's been going extremely well in all the towns that have had it the last few years.
What is the reason we want to ban plastic? Give me some reason.
I could talk your ear off, Counselor. But environmental reasons, the average person uses 300 plastic shopping bags a year. There's 15,000 people or so in Waterville, so that's 4.2 million plastic shopping bags used just by people in Waterville every year.
Where do they go?
Exactly. Most of them end up in a landfill where our trash is currently going. And when they go to a landfill, they're going to be there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So they will remain in the landfill forever. Plastic bags are made out of fossil fuels, which are a finite resource, so there's a climate change impact as well. A lot of plastic bags end up in our waterways, both rivers and the oceans, where they're ingested by wildlife, so there's a huge wildlife concern as well. About 1 trillion plastic bags are used every year. There's 40 countries around the world that have already banned them entirely, many in Europe, in Asia, in Africa. So over the last 20 years, there's been thousands of plastic bag ordinances that have been adopted around the world.
Sure, and you have to understand the climate we're in when we're looking at some of these insane places with the straw bans and things. It's easier to accept a bag ban if you don't feel like you're going down a slippery slope. I know in my family we used to use a ton of plastic bags because we had lots of kids in diapers. I have one kid in diapers. We use less, and we now bring some disposable bags and we take some home. So we do reuse some of them.
Yep.
But I think there's a real concern about this slippery slope of this agenda that is ban everything, and that's, to me, it's not even a business friendly issue. It's just a fundamental.
Sure, and that's not our agenda.
What is the role of municipal government, and where does it stop when we can barely fix our sidewalks the right way? If you look around town.
Yep.
I prefer that we focus on the basics and try to enforce this kind of stuff. And I'm not trying to be rude to you guys. These are legitimate questions that I have.
Yep. It's not our agenda. We don't have a predisposed agenda. Styrofoam is another product that causes a lot of environmental pollution, and other towns have already acted. So it's sort of a next natural step. But again, we're not pursuing anything right now.
Council?
Patty, does this cost the city any money to hold? I mean, obviously we have an election that day anyway, but is it going to cost us any extra money?
If we add this to the November election, there might be slight increases because we would have a citywide question where some wards wouldn't be voting. So Ward 2 and 6 don't have a ballot currently. And if this goes forward, there would be more ballots to print for that. So there's some additional printing costs and a little bit of coding costs. But certainly coupling it with another election is a lot more cost efficient than doing a special election mid-year or whatever.
But everybody, how are we voting for government?
The other thing that I want to point out too is that here we are in a budgetary crisis, like we're raising tax bill rate by 8.3%. Think about the budgetary ramifications of another ordinance that we have to enforce as well. Think about the finances that are entailed with enforcing another ordinance. Think about the resources that are entailed, obviously, with code enforcement to enforce something like this. We have compiled, and we have 1.5 people in the code enforcement office. This is yet another layer that we're going to apply to them if this goes through. So I want you to think about the budget, not just about business friendly. I want you to think about the context of everything, because this would require the city to enforce this if passed. And I just want to make sure that we all are on the same page with understanding the complexities of the budget, the increase of the tax bill rate, the strain on city resources as it already is. So these are some things that we have to really be mindful of, you know, going forward with, you know, if this is a slippery slope that we're talking about, starting with the plastic bags, what would entail by adding more additives to it, you know, down the line. So these are some of the concerns. I'm not just preaching about business friendly, I'm just saying that we have to be mindful of all these things, even from a budgetary process. So these are things, and we also have to be mindful of what is the senior citizens and what are the fixed income people looking at? That, you know, what are they looking at for convenience? Those are some of the things that we have to think of as well. And the aging population of Waterville is just enormous.
Well, one thing I'll just say very quickly, we listened to the community in writing this ordinance. Towns in Maine either have a complete ban at all stores on plastic bags or they have a 5-cent fee. We would be pretty unique, whereas this ban would only apply to stores that are 10,000 square feet or larger. And that was an idea we got directly from a community member, so that you could still get a plastic shopping bag at a Waterville business as long as it was under 10,000 square feet. A lot of those businesses, I'll add, are locally owned and not big box stores. And so I think that could have some benefits to our local economy as well.
This is a final question. This is more because I know you probably have the answer. Do you know in the other towns that have implemented something like this, has the experience been they've gone more towards you just have to get your disposable bags, or do they do they shift to paper?
Sure. Well,
we're talking about those that don't have a fee.
Each town is different. Some have a fee on paper bags. Some have an outright ban on paper bags, so you have to bring your own bag, whether it's reusable or plastic, to the store with you. But anecdotally, the shift has been pretty noticeable to people bring their own reusable bags to the store. We've learned that Hannaford pays about 1.6 cents for each plastic bag that they hand out. They probably hand out 50,000, 100,000 plastic shopping bags a year, just a total guess, but think about how many bags you see leaving the store. You know, Hannaford could save tens of thousands of dollars if they didn't have to hand out plastic shopping bags anymore. Of course, they might have to replace some of those with paper, but if we all brought our own reusable bags to the store, we could save Hannaford and other businesses a lot of money.
We will go to the public. Ma'am, were you with them, or did you have a public question?
No, I'm with them.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure.
Other folks wanted to make comments, but if you
Oh, yes, no, by all means, take your time and...
My name is Stu Silverstein, and I'm a resident of Waterville, and I want to tell you why I support the ban on plastic bags. To me, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, hunter, fisherman, cross-country skier. We all share the same home, and that's our environment. And no one wants to have a filthy environment. We'd like to keep it as pristine as possible. When you're walking down the city streets, when you're walking through the woods, you don't want to see litter, and particularly you don't want to see plastic bags. And our ordinance would mostly eliminate the plastic bags from the waste stream. These bans have taken place all across the country with success. In fact, the whole country of France eliminated plastic shopping bags. You can't get them, they don't have them. And I don't see people exiting the country because of it. And I don't see people complaining and leaving cities that have instituted a ban on plastic bags. No one is really suffering. There's been no population decrease. And one thing I want to point out, and it's not a very nice fact, but every piece of plastic that's ever been created still exists in some form. It doesn't compost. It might break up into little pieces, but it's still there. And if it's incinerated, then we're breathing potentially plastic dust and debris. The ordinance is not about recycling. The ordinance is about banning something that should never have been manufactured in the first place. Thank you.
Marion Flaherty, Ward 6 again. I had something else I was going to say, but I've changed my mind. I was thinking the other day, I was remembering back, and I'm really dating myself now, to the first great whatever river race on the Kennebec. And for you, those of you who don't remember it or weren't born yet, in about 1979 or 1980, the Kennebec River became clean enough for the salmon to be running again. And there was this great celebration. It was really a lot of fun. I built with a sort of a Huckleberry Finn style raft with a bunch of friends, and we went down the river to Gardner very slowly. It was probably a boat that would have, Benedict Arnold wouldn't have wanted it. So anyway, what the point I'm trying to make here is that is because of the Clean Water Act of the 1970s that was touted by our very own Ed Muskin. And we talked today about this Riverwalk project that we're looking forward to having here in Waterville. If we hadn't had the Clean Water Act, there would be no river project. So what I'm trying to say is that I think that there's an absolute connection between environmental legislation and an improved economy, a more interesting economy, a more exciting economy. And I think that plastic bags absolutely fits into this, that we can work our way toward an even more beautiful city than we already have. If we just get rid of some of this litter and keep thinking forward like that. Thank you.
I'm Linda Woods, and I live in Ward 4. In 2005, I was the co-leader of a group called Gang Green, a gang of faculty and students at Lawrence High School who were concerned about the environment. As participants in the Carbon Rally Challenge, each month we were given a different challenge aimed to reduce our carbon footprint. One month, the task was to reject all plastic shopping bags. I have not accepted a plastic shopping bag since. In fact, I have a reputation around this city for saying, "No plastic bag, thank you." Just ask the clerks who worked at Beverly's in the concourse. Making that change was not all that difficult for me, as I already brought my reusable bag to Hannaford. However, I understand that changing behavior is difficult. From what I've read, it takes approximately 66 days of repetition to form a new habit. Therefore, within 2 months of our ordinance passage, people will have developed the new habit of bringing a reusable bag to the store. Paper bags will still be available for those who take longer to make this transition. Throughout this month of going without plastic bags during the Carbon Rally Challenge, we learned why saying no to plastic bags is so important. As Todd said, the average person uses 300 bags a year. Bags are not recyclable, and most end up in landfills. Worst of all, many people simply toss their bags on the side of the road. If you think that statement is incorrect, walk with me along Lincoln Street when I take my daily walk. During runoff in the spring, these plastic bags are carried to the rivers and onward into the oceans. We also read and discussed The Plastic Ocean by Captain Charles Moore. In 2010, I was fortunate to hear a presentation by Captain Moore at Messalonsky High School as part of the Global Forum. Moore was the first person to document the Great Garbage Patch, an area of plastic debris twice the size of Texas that is found in the Pacific Ocean. Recently, I watched the documentary Albatross at Railroad Square Cinema. I'll admit, before walking into the movie, I hadn't even thought much about an albatross since I'd never seen one. The documentary shows the decline of the albatross population on Midway Island, caused primarily by their inability to distinguish plastic debris from food. I'll spare you a description of the last 10 minutes of this movie, except to say there was not a dry eye in the cinema when we left. Since Maine has almost 4,570 miles of coastline, we should all be concerned about this proliferation of plastic. People who lobster routinely haul plastic up in their traps and find it floating on the ocean's surface. A ban of plastic bags at stores 10,000 square feet and larger in Waterville, Maine will not solve this problem, but it will be a step in the right direction. 14 other Maine municipalities have similar ordinances. Please give Waterville voters the opportunity to do the right thing. Thank you.
Julian Payne, Ward 5. I'll be very brief. I think maybe some hybrid of it instead of outright banning where you charge 5 cents so that the public can actually decide, do they want to make that transition to physical bags? The one thing, when I'm at the grocery shop in Ward 5, you see a lot of elderly. They have a walker, they have a stick. They've had to try and make it to the car in the winter. For them to carry large bags is trip and fall hazard, and it's not very convenient for them. If you see, when you see the elderly, getting to the store is a chore. They like to walk with their walker. And I think that's a great convenience for them. And certainly when I go home to England, the bags are banned, well, they're not banned, but you pay 5 pence for a bag, so you make the choice. What do you want to do? Obviously, I'm on holiday, so I don't buy the cotton bags at that time. But if they were banned, what am I going to do there for a week? Secondly, the plastic bags I use from Hannaford, I use to pick up dog poop in the yard, bin liners, the kitchen bin liner. They're not just thrown in a landfill. So I'm going to have to now buy all different kinds of bags. I'm certainly don't know what to do with the dog poop, and they're very convenient to put that in, tie it, and dispose of it. And the alternative bags that I would have to purchase have a much longer degradable lifespan than Hannaford bags that are mostly made in the US. So I think there's many factors. I definitely think if you're gonna go that route, at least charge 5 or 10p for the bag rather than outright destroying the convenience for people. And also, we have a lot of people that come from out of state, a lot of lake people. They're not gonna come on the plane with all these bags. They just want to get their bags and go to the lake. So that we have kind of a unique situation in Waterville, and I think a compromise would be a better situation than an all-right ban, because it's kind of strange to have them as contraband at the moment. But thank you.
Anybody else have a comment or question?
Skip Cool, Ward 2. I'd like to remind the council, under the current sidewalk recycling system we have now, we're not allowed to put our bags in the recycling bin. So maybe you ought to explore improving that system instead of going down the road to San Francisco.
Bob Villa, Ward 7. I'm asking the council to probably not vote for this ordinance. It's up to an individual what he wants to do. This is only the beginning. First it's going to be paper bags, then straws, tires, who knows? Styrofoam, whatever. I just think it's an individual choice. When I go to Hannaford, Walmart, because you're targeting stores that are 10,000. I don't care if it's a Hannaford bag or a Bull Moose bag or a Scotty's Pizza bag. it's still a plastic bag. So if you're gonna target Hannaford, your Walmart, Home Depot, do it away. I mean, these elderly people can't afford 5 cents a bag like they do down in Save-A-Lot. Thank you.
Can I just make a few clarifying remarks?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, very briefly, because I know we have a longer agenda.
No, it's all right.
So just a couple quick things. So I brought some handouts. So we're talking about these plastic bags, the thin film bags. These produce bags, you put your produce and your meat, these would not be banned. And you could easily pick up dog poop in these. So just to say that.
He's a vegetarian.
Secondly, yeah, sure. I mean, reuse the ones from your green beans, I guess. Another thing Mr. Payne said was, why not charge a fee instead of a ban? Fees don't work. Fees on plastic bags don't work, and they're a tax on people. That's why we did a ban, so that people don't have to pay 5-10 cents for a bag. I think, and banning plastic bags would actually be better for the environment than people paying 25 cents to get the 5 bags. So instead of putting a tax on the people, we said, let's just ban them at larger stores rather than the smaller stores. So I just wanted to clarify a few of those things. And I did say that York voted by the people, but it was actually the selectmen that put it in. But Mayor, I'm happy to send you a list of towns that have voted by the people and voted by the council if you'd like.
No, you gave me a good enough
Okay.
list.
I remember I said York, but it was actually a selectmen vote. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
This issue was a lot messier than I thought. I'm Alan Dewin and I live in Winslow, but I vote in Waterville. Don't tell anybody. No. Almost every day, all year round, I pick up litter on both sides of the 2-cent bridge. This bridge is quite a tourist attraction and maybe Waterville's biggest draw. It's a beautiful area that people enjoy photographing and viewing wildlife. Older people bring their grandchildren to walk across the bridge. The litter and trash are unsightly. Each time I do this cleanup, I find so many plastic bags along the shore, by the clock, or in the nearby field. This isn't good for the ducks or other river animals. I don't understand why people just don't pick up after themselves. Instead, they throw everything, bottles, plastic cups, bags, and more along the riverbank. Eventually, all this debris will end up in the river. In fact, I don't understand why people need to take a plastic shopping bag for every purchase. I saw some guy who bought only one item except an offered plastic bag. Ridiculous. I wish every shopper was like this other guy who had a reusable bag. He said bringing it was a no-brainer. The only way to stop this pollution is to ban plastic bags. As an animal lover and a concerned citizen, I urge you to support this ordinance to ban plastic bags in Waterville. The ducks and I will thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, we'll have a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Did you get that, Patty?
Yep.
All right. Moving on to Resolution 127, 2018.
A resolution providing for appointing Alex Fortier to the planning board. Be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Waterville, acting as municipal officer as follows. That the City Council hereby authorize the appointment of Alex Fortier to the planning board with a term to expire in 2021.
Move to adopt.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Did you get that, Patty?
I did, thank you.
Resolution 128, 2018.
A resolution providing for appointing Chris Rancourt to the planning board.
Move to, oh, sorry.
Resolved by the City Council of the City of Waterville, acting as municipal officers as follows. That the City Council hereby authorize the appointment of Chris Rancourt to the planning board with a term to expire in 2020.
Move to adopt.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Next is Resolution 129, 2018.
A resolution providing for issuance of a victualer's license to Desired Treats LLC doing business as Grub. Be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Waterville, acting as municipal officers as follows. That the City Council hereby authorize the issuance of a victualer's license to Desired Treats LLC doing business as Grub, 144 College Avenue.
Move to adopt.
Second. Any questions?
Is anyone here from
Discussions?
Grub?
Anybody
Anyone
here
here from business?
Oh.
Hey, there he is. Oh.
I did. I was just listening. So yeah, we bought the old
I believe it was called the Open Hearth. For a little while, it was the Freedom Cafe.
Yeah.
So we bought that building. We're converting the restaurant into a bakery. Hoping to open sometime in September.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you. All those in favor? Next, we have Resolution 130, 2018.
A resolution providing for issuance of a liquor license to Satiris and Anna Guidas doing business as OPA LLC. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as municipal officers that the City Council hereby authorize the issuance of a liquor license to Satiris and Anna Guidas doing business as OPA LLC at 139 Main Street.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And discussion.
Is Mr. Budis?
Just if anyone had questions or anything like that, just.
Is it a new restaurant you're opening?
Yeah, so it's going to be OPA. We're at the old location of 139 Main Street. This is my mother, Anna. Grew up in Waterville and had the old Waterville house. Put a lot of money into the building, to the business, hoping to have something that we can feed local people, some different culture, low price, and put more money back into the city.
Yeah, you've done a phenomenal job up there too. It's looking really nice, so thank you for that.
We're in the process. We're trying to make it the best as we can.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Welcome to Waterville. We look forward
He's
to
been in
that.
Waterville.
Been here 30 years and trying to keep it going, so.
Awesome. Awesome job.
Yeah, all right, great.
Cool. Any
That's it. Thank
questions or anything like that, feel free to answer, and excited to have you guys all stop by.
Do you have a website established yet? Or?
Not yet,
One step
we're working
at a
on
time.
it.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's a one step.
I know, I was just getting the word. Yeah.
Hopefully by October 1st, so.
Okay. I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
All right, we're gonna take a vote.
Good food.
All in favor? And we have Resolution 131, 2018.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for issuance of a victualer's license to Satiris and Anna Guidas doing business as OPA LLC.
Move to adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Boom.
Thank
On
you
your
guys,
way. Thanks.
appreciate it.
Good
Next
food.
is Resolution 132, 2018.
A resolution providing for renewal of contract with O'Donnell Lee, PA attorneys at law. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as municipal officers that the contract with O'Donnell Lee, PA attorneys at law be renewed for a 3-year period.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there any discussion or questions? Public? All in favor? Next is Resolution 133, 2018.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for appointment of a marijuana study committee.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, Big Nate, you're on that committee, huh?
Yes.
That's why he's interested in a new restaurant. Next, Resolution 134, 2018.
A resolution providing for extension of lease for solar site. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as municipal officers that the existing lease with Bezos Energy LLC for the former landfill property be extended for up to 1 year under the same terms and conditions as in the existing lease and as further explained in the attached lease document.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Mike?
I can give you just a brief history. It was a year ago at this time that the city entered into 2 leases with Bezos Energy. And I know that Bob Patton is here representing Bezos. So if you have questions of Bob, I'm sure he'd be welcome to come to the podium. The leases were for the landfill site, old Waterville landfill site in the Webb Road, and then across the street at the property we call the Runser property. And so what Bezos is asking with this proposed resolution is to extend that lease they got from you last year for another year in order for them to finish studying the feasibility of the landfill site for solar development, which would be a huge, huge, huge benefit to the city of Waterville, not only producing electricity from that kind of source, but we're making use of a landfill that really we don't have many other uses for. So it couldn't get much better than that. So this is an extension of that one-year lease to give them another year. What's not on your agenda is the other lease for the Runcer property, and I want to make sure you know, and Bob can explain this too, is the other lease has what's called an option to exercise that lease. So they have 90 days for the Runcer property to come back to us and say, we are serious about doing something at the Runcer property with solar, and here are the terms that we're proposing for your site. We'd probably like a permanent lease for that site, much smaller than the landfill, but I think they're at a point where they're much more ready to move. So they have 90 days to come back to us with a proposal for that site. So I think that you'll certainly hear more about this within the next 3 months. But for tonight, it's just the idea of extending that lease for a one-year period. Questions? And again, I'm sure Bob is anxious.
What's been holding up the proposal? Is it just studying, or is it just comparing cost analysis? What is the holdup?
I'll let him answer.
Hi, I'm Bob Patton. I'm with Gizos Energy. A year ago, July 27th, the City Council was gracious enough to sign 2 lease options with my company. We're looking at putting solar on 2 sites here in Waterville. One is the Runcer property, approximately 20 acres more or less by the airport, and the other is at the old landfill. The smaller site by the airport, we went studies on both of them. Wetlands, vernal pools, critical habitat, and a bunch of other studies. The smaller site has gone through the study process more quickly. Right now, we can see the end, that we have our arms around it. We've got a couple more studies with the FAA, glare analysis, obstruction, environmental. Once we get through that, then we'll be ready to build that. So we're confident now from that point of view that it's worth the time to sit with the city and go through the legal ramifications regarding a long-term lease of 20 years or more for the solar site. The transfer site is a little more complex. We found wetlands, vernal pools. The site constraints are such that we are not quite through all of our studies on that site yet. Because it's an operating landfill, the legal lift on that between us and the city is a little heavier. We want to make sure that that project is a go before we ask the city now to participate in going through the examination of a lease and an operating agreement. So that's why one's a little bit ahead of the other.
Thank you.
Sure.
I just want to say I think this project is as exciting now as it was a year ago. We talked about how to expand revenue sources for the city and just have progressive projects taking place here in the city, and this fits both of those things. This is land that is completely useless, and we're excited that somebody is interested in looking at doing something on it, particularly a solar project. I also want to thank Garvin. I know Garvin has been a good resource and working on our behalf to assist you in any way he can. So.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? All in favor? Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Next is Resolution 135, 2018.
A resolution providing for approval to enter cooperative agreement Main Street traffic project. Be it resolved by the Waterville City Council acting as municipal officers that the City of Waterville enter into a cooperative agreement with Colby College and Maine DOT, which will include preliminary engineering and other required assessments for the potential conversation of one-way traffic to two-way on Front and Main Streets, as well as landscaping and parking improvements as described in December 2016 downtown Waterville feasibility study.
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right. It's been a long time since we've had this conversation. I think the last time we had a meeting was well over a year ago, and this room was packed with, I think, over 100 people. There was some very exciting potential plans that were laid out from an initial view that there was a partnership between the city, Maine State DOT, as well as Colby College. In the past couple of weeks, the city has put forward a grant request for $8 million to the federal government as part of the federal Build Grant program. And as part of that, Colby College, if we were to get this grant, we looked at things from not only a conversion of one-way to two-way, but increasing the safety features, new sidewalks, anything you can think of that you would want when you're talking about a full downtown revitalization was kind of priced into this bid. And Colby College actually stepped forward and said, because the city's position has been, it's great, but we do not have money for this. I mean, obviously we've been through some of these tough conversations. This is just not something the city can do. And Colby stepped up and first said that they would participate by over $1 million. There was a question of an extra $500,000 by the end, and as part of the application, Colby actually signed on to say that they would step in to provide that as well. Again, should we get this $8 million grant, so you're talking about an $11 million potential overhaul of downtown. That would include the traffic changes that would need to take place, both to allow slower traffic and potentially bigger sidewalks and things to get Main Street as more of a destination, but also it would affect Front Street because that traffic that is essentially just a throughway now, a lot of those people, what studies have found is that when you're going down Main Street at a slightly slower speed, it might take you an extra 3 to 4 minutes to get from top to bottom, but it's going to feel like 10, so people are going to be more likely to head to Front Street or over to Elm Street. Anyway, I'm talking a lot. This is a long way of saying that this is I think an exciting partnership at a good chance. I don't want to get everybody's hopes up about a grant. We know there's thousands of these grant applications that go in from around the country. But at the same time, we also know that this is picking up support, some congressional support. Our delegation is looking very, very closely at it, and they've got a keen eye on it. So I think it was put together very well, and there was a lot of economic analysis that showed that a project like this would benefit all Waterville taxpayers by increasing property values on Main Street, and that's that. I guess that. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to add my advocacy for that as well. My stance, as far as my ward is concerned, has always been no taxpayer money to do a two-way conversion of Main Street, but to pursue all matters, as we did not too long ago, to vote in support of advancing all efforts to try to do this from a standpoint, from a grant, from other groups that are interested in helping fund without making the taxes higher in the city of Waterville, which we all know we are under the strain of the populace. So I do want to commend Colby College, Maine DOT. This again highlights the fact of an excellent partnership that we have with Colby College as a financial muscle.
Maine DOT has been a great partner.
Absolutely, and the state has been very gracious to be involved and in our local sphere of our municipality as far as advancing economic viability for our city. So I definitely think it's something worth pursuing. Preliminary engineering, and the biggest thing about this is that this costs absolutely zero to the city of Waterville. So this is a great step forward, a positive step forward, and we hope and pray that $8 million grant and other adverse grants that could supplement that would be granted. So it's I'm very much excited about this.
Just to clarify, I forgot actually the most important thing. This isn't a vote to convert Main Street and Front Street to one-way to two-way. This is actually because there's a heck of a lot more detailed studying that needs to go into this.
Yeah.
This is actually paying $400,000 for the city and the Maine State DOT to actually continue to do further studies. Should the decision be made to actually go to one-way or two-way, you're going to have a whole bunch more public meetings that are designed specifically around that, because there's just, as we saw from even the preliminary ones over a year ago, it's not something that can be wrapped up in one meeting. And because we didn't have any money, Colby College said they would pay the city's portion of the fee as part of this. So That's what this is. This is actually to fund the study, this is not a vote to change traffic on Main Street tonight.
Yep.
Some other questions? Yes, could you just come up to the podium and let us know who you are?
Do I have to?
You do, only because it's piped into the official documented record there. I used to tell people no, but I got in trouble for that. We couldn't hear him on the camera.
My name is Tony Carter. I live in Ward 6. Well, it's pretty basic with me. I live between Main and Front Street. Okay, so basically, this remains an abstraction. There is nothing in writing at this point in time in terms of recommendations.
Correct.
So this is still preliminary.
Yeah, this is correct. This is to do a much more in-depth and comprehensive study to look at feasibility scenarios, because even what we saw from the preliminary sketches was that, you know, doing streets today is not the same as it was 50 or 60 years ago. You're talking about a whole host of new safety features that are going to be required, and you think about updated signaling and crosswalks and sidewalks and all those things. So there's a lot of engineering that goes into this, and because this is going to affect multiple intersections and traffic lights, we're still in the study phase.
Well, you know, as a resident of that area, you know, I'm extremely concerned in terms of conditions we're dealing with at present in terms of, I don't think you can discuss traffic flow without considering parking, for example.
That's correct.
And parking remains another abstraction. And, you know, just go from Hathaway on to Appleton at this point in time. And the Colby kids aren't here yet, and, you know, there's a lot yet to happen. And I don't really think you can discuss traffic flow without parking. And parking remains...
We're actually not looking at this in the vacuum of just traffic. This particular traffic study, if you look at the preliminary ones, one of the things that we had to look at was street width, parking availability, and we have to have a certain level of parking. And when we talk about the greater picture, you know, because we're talking a lot about traffic, this is really about a much larger picture. It does spill over into additional parking areas. 3.5 years ago, was not for two-way traffic until I saw enough studies and examples where other towns across the country, Ithaca, New York comes to mind as some place that's relatively close by, where these reversals were done of, you know, changes were made, you know, in the 50s and 60s with the idea that it was going to make things more efficient and rifle traffic through faster and more efficiently, and it did, and it killed main streets around the country. And from more than just anecdotal evidence, it shows that this actually has the potential to create a much more robust economy and actually assist in all of these other things. If these projects help with the downtown development and help increase property values, all of that real estate right now is in the downtown tip. So when we talk about parking and everyone says, well, how are we going to afford more parking? Really that money should be spent on infrastructure. It hasn't always been spent that way in the past, but these are the kinds of projects that could result in our ability to actually pay for more parking without having to raise taxes as well. So I mean, there is that scenario as well. But I think, and if you leave your stuff with Mike, we can get you some of the old materials. You'll see parking was addressed in all of the studies that talked about traffic and how many spots could be where, and whether they had to be slanted more or not, whether there would still be parallel parking. And I think what you'll find also is that there's multiple options within the options.
Well, I would just add one more thing.
Sure.
I was around when Waterville, Main Street, and Front Street were two-way, 50s, 60s. And if I remember correctly, you probably had 1 to 3 cars an hour on those roads. Now, I might be exaggerating a wee bit, but it's a very different world now than it was back then. And, you know, other than, you know, saying parking is considered. You know, there's so much happening in Waterville at this point in time in terms of, say, Railroad Square Cinema coming into the center, et cetera, et cetera. Again, you know, parking remains an abstraction. Eventually, something is going to be done, but look at it today.
It does. Now, there are going to be those who agree with me and those who disagree with me. I will say, having lived here my whole life and having seen the kind of the decline since the 1990s of our city, if me having to walk a little bit to get somewhere and having trouble finding a parking spot in downtown is my worst problem, those are good problems to have. It's a lot, those are, to me, much better problems than having empty storefronts and having a million open spaces. Now, I will say I come down a lot. I never have problems parking. I may not always get the spot right in front of the door where I'm going. But again, not everyone's going to agree with me, but I think if parking becomes an issue, that's a great problem for us to be solving.
Okay. Well, okay isn't necessarily agreement. Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor? Okay. Next is Resolution 136, 2018.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for establishment of an escrow account with Walmart.
Move to adopt.
Second.
I'd like to make an amendment to this, please.
Yeah, okay.
Where it says in the second paragraph that the city manager be hereby authorized to establish and to execute an escrow account. So to add and to execute.
That would probably make sense.
Okay.
Move as Councilor Sol amended.
No, we have to, you have to second the motion for the amendment.
A second.
Okay, can I get all in favor of the amendment?
Sorry.
And now you can move as amended.
Move as Councilor Sol amended it.
Second.
Okay.
Any discussion? All in favor? Resolution 137, 2018.
Oh, move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
I lost my place. I didn't realize we voted so fast. So,
A resolution providing for a bid award fiscal year 18-19 motor fuels cooperative purchase agreement.
move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion?
Looks like they went with the lowest bid, so.
That's usually John's question. All in favor? Resolution 138, 2018.
Move to read by title only, please.
Second.
All in favor?
An order providing for acceptance and appropriation of 2018 Burn Justice Assistance Grant.
Move to adopt.
Then second.
Discussion? All in favor? Resolution 139, 2018.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
An order providing for appropriation of funds.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Now, this is, Mike, it's just money to get some equipment for the airport, or?
Right. We had a piece of equipment that we sold, actually for a better price than what we expected, $4,500. And we'd like to use that money to refurbish the other piece of equipment that's listed here.
Oh, so we're not going to take any more money, we're just going to use that.
Right. The city policy allows us to sell city property as long as we advertise it, solicit bids, which we did do. However, the money comes in, we don't have authority to spend unless we come back and say, we'd like to reapply those funds that we got from the sale to another piece of equipment. That's what this is about.
Move to adopt. Oh, I did.
Any questions from the public? All in favor? Resolution 140, 2018.
Move to read by title only, please.
Second.
All in favor?
An ordinance providing for grant acceptance and fund expenditure for airport 2018 projects.
Move to adopt.
Second.
These are two major grants that we received from the FAA. The FAA allocates money every year to Waterville Airport, and most of the projects that they fund are at 90% funding from the federal government, 5% state, 5% city. So each year, like I say, we get a certain amount that we can apply to certain projects. So you see the first project, and as Randy has described it below, is the grubbing and grading project, smoothing out an area adjacent to our runway, keeping the vegetation down. The other project is a wildlife hazard assessment. Actually can become a pretty big problem if deer, turkeys, other wildlife get inside the fence in the airport. Can cause some real serious traffic safety hazards. So the feds make that money available for that kind of thing too.
Some good-looking grants out of this month.
I'm sorry?
Some good-looking grants out of this month.
Yeah. Yeah, Randy has done a very, very good job.
Another great news for our airport, so it's very well noted on that.
Yep, Randy's done a very good job tracking these down. Our 5% share comes out of the funds that we already have at the airport in our reserve.
Yep.
All in favor? Order 141, 2018.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
An order providing for acceptance of donations for the Riverwalk project.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And Mike, this is just kind of a blanket
Yeah.
permission so we can accept money, so you don't have to keep coming back here every time someone wants to give you money.
Right, right. We've been raising money, but we don't have the authority to spend it, even though we're raising for the Riverwalk. So we come back to the council asking permission to spend what we've collected for the project. And, you know, we set a goal of 1.5 million. We're $26,000 away from that goal, which means we've raised 1 million, if I get my math right, 1,476,000, which is pretty remarkable.
Yes. Well, they gave you 300,000.
Maybe we should start a campaign for the pool.
True.
All right. All right, we'll take a...
Yeah, 26,000 short from the 1.5, but we have plenty to do the project.
John said he'll kick in the labor for free for the rest.
Well, any other questions?
All in favor?
Okay.
142, resolution 142, 2018.
Move to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
A resolution providing for declaring a vacancy for a city council seat in Ward 3.
Move to adopt.
Second.
I would make, since we have an election coming up in November, I would like to make a motion that we hold off on filling the seat until November. It just would make sense instead of having, by the time we get done everything, it'll be end of August, beginning of September, and then we have another election. So.
This resolution doesn't actually speak to whether it's a special election or whether it's going to be November, right? It just allows us to advertise.
This would be advertising to solicit candidates to possibly appoint someone who would serve until the person is elected and sworn in November.
Oh, I see. So it does.
So you end up having like a couple of months.
Exactly.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment? Okay, can I get a motion to move as amended?
Move it. Second.
All in favor? And
But
Does
do
that
we still have?
mean that, are we basically killing this resolution in fact? Is that what I'm to understand, that we're not gonna advertise and solicit?
Yeah.
Correct.
If you declare it vacant, then.
oh, yeah, you have.
The process kick in.
Well, it authorizes them to direct me to do certain things. If they don't direct me to do certain things,
We're
then.
directing you not to do anything.
Certain things.
They declared it vacant, but they don't want her to do anything about it.
We're allowing you to do nothing. We're allowing you to do nothing, Patty.
Okay,
So-
so you're declaring a vacancy and we're not gonna take action at this.
Correct.
Perfect.
There we go.
What's that?
You know what you're doing now? That scarecrow there. Put her name on it.
Well, do we have to at some point ask people whether they're interested in running in November? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the caucus process.
Did you candidate for it too?
Which is underway, yeah.
We didn't.
Yeah, in fact, there's a special municipal election for Ward 3 and Ward 5 city council seats because that's vacated, there's a year left on that term, and the seat where you're sitting has a 1-year term that's being elected. So those 2 seats, in fact, are part of the nomination and caucus process, which there are papers available for currently.
Yep.
So I guess there's nothing to say that in November, after the election, you could appoint that person or submit them in right after the election if you wanted to fill that seat more quickly, you know? Rather than wait till January when the swearing in happens or whatever.
Oh, I see, nominate the person that was in fact elected.
Correct.
Because they don't take the seat.
Well, we would have to do something, because Ward, well,
That makes sense.
no, yeah. So,
You'd have to swear them in earlier, I guess.
Yeah.
Those 2.
Good.
You could. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Resolution 143, 2018.
move to read by title only.
So that was passed 5-0, is that correct? You moved it as amended?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. All right, where are we now? The last 43?
Yeah.
And that was title only?
Yes.
Okay. A resolution providing for issuance of a tax anticipation note.
Yes, title only,
Okay.
because it's a long one. So what this is proposing is to allow the city, me and the treasurer, to borrow money in anticipation of taxes coming in. Because we're at a point where our cash balance in our checking account is pretty low, and considering that tax bills don't go out until the end of August, the first payment's not due until the middle of October, first or second week in October, we're worried that we're going to run out of funds in our checking account between now and October. We have plenty of money invested in long-term investments. We don't really want to go and break those investments because we'll pay a penalty to do that. So this borrowing would allow us, it's a very short term, 3 months borrowing that we would go out and do. So it's like a credit line that we'll establish with a bank. If we need money to pay our weekly expenses, we'll draw down on that credit line. If we don't, we won't use it. It's kind of a safety valve.
Absolutely.
I talked to Mike about it, and to be honest, my opinion when I talked to Mike was, I was surprised we didn't already have a relationship established for a short-term borrowing like this. To me, in the long term, even if we didn't need it, it makes complete financial sense to do it because you can't always time those cash flows.
I'm sorry. So Mike, though, we do have several $1 million in the fund balance, but that's all tied up in long-term investments?
Right. That's the problem, John. Right. The other problem is this. PERC had told us that we'd be getting our final payout from our contract, the end of the PERC contract, in June, $1.6 million. Then it was August 15th, and now August 31st, we hope to have the money to you. If we had the $1.6 million from that PERC contract, as they had told us, I wouldn't be here on this item. So that has certainly impacted on it, too.
Yep.
Yep. But the mayor's right. There are times when we get kind of dangerously close in between tax due dates. The good thing about Waterville is with 4 payments, many towns don't have taxes due 4 times a year. They only have taxes due twice. So a lot of towns use this borrowing in anticipation because they have long time periods between taxes coming in. We have 4 quarters. That helps our cash flow a lot.
Yep. Mike, has there been any thought to a certain percentage discount if a resident pays the whole year up front?
You can't do that by law.
Well, I can pay I pay the whole year up front.
Yeah.
Before. Well, I can't do a discount.
Yeah, it's been talked about, not for quite a long time. If you're going to do a discount, then you actually have to add a number to your budget. You have to add an expense to your budget, so we can give you back some of that money you paid.
But you can do it though. But
Oh, yes, towns do it. When I was in Oakland, town of Oakland.
And sometimes I wrote the check for a year just so I didn't have to pay the stamps and write 4 times. But what prevented me doing it was I was told if I died or sold the house, then it's non-refundable, that portion.
Oh, well, I don't know about that.
Yeah. So it puts you up, right for a year.
Yes, Tom.
Can you borrow on the investments that you've made? Can you go to a bank and say, I've got X many millions of dollars into investments, and then borrow off of that? You should be at a pretty low rate.
Probably, we could do that. We didn't really investigate that option. Oh, I should have said, sorry, that the rate that we got 3 different proposals, and we're gonna, if the council agrees to approve this, go with Bangor Savings Bank at a rate of 2.37, which is a pretty favorable rate. And we should have that amount paid off. Anything we use will be paid off by October when taxes come in. I'll find out that question. I hadn't thought about getting a kind of a loan on the investments that we have already.
Should be at a pretty low rate.
Yeah, right.
The money's there.
Because the money's there. Right.
Right, so you're paying an unsecured rate.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor?
Thank you. I don't have anything on the manager's report.
Motion to adjourn?